On the Track is a monthly web TV show about cryptozoology, natural history, green issues and whatever else the team feel like making up as they go along. Enjoy!
So, what's on today's show, Mr. John?
Well, Hennis, in this week's episode we have the second part of my conversation with the legendary Adrian Shine.
I really like the old credits.
Hello, my name's John Downs. I'm here at Bideford District Hospital being pushed along by Graham, where are you, Graham? There you are, Graham. Being pushed along by Graham. I am just on my way back from having bits cut off my feet. I'm the director of the Centre for Reporting the World in Welcome to another episode on the Track. Well, ladies and gentlemen, every Wednesday evening at 6:30 for about a quarter of an hour, and every Saturday afternoon at 3 for about twice that, me and my little cat, Lily Tinkerbell, bring you a mixture, a melange, a muddle, I can't think of anything else beginning with M. Lauren, what begins with M?
Mitochondria, of course.
Mitochondria are organelles that produce energy for cells. They are found in the cytoplasm of most cells in animals, plants and fungi, and they break down the food molecules to create adenosine triphosphate, which fuels the cell's biochemical reactions. And as I have been told that I look like a cross between a Dumbledore and Robert Wyatt, I must have all sorts of great wisdom, and I think that this show does the same for the international cryptozoological community. And it is a mixture of hard science, weird shit, and surreality. And you want to know what surreality is? Well, let's ask him.
Surreality is a new way of looking at the universe through the lens of absurdity, and it certainly works for me. Rule Britannia.
And now over to the second part of my conversation with the legendary Adrian Shine about his new book, The Natural History of Sea Serpents. Yes, I've heard, bizarrely, I've heard both good and horrible things about him. There are still people who are fond of him. Or fond of
well,
him.
they're fond. I think they might be fond of Frank Searle because he was a rogue and they took him for a likable one. Or it might be that he was the one that could produce monster photographs. The rest of us are woefully bad at that. He was very good at producing monster pictures. Of course he was.
Well, I suppose every man should stick to what he's good at.
He did. He was prolific in monster photographs.
Now, I saw that film and enjoyed it massively as a piece of entertainment.
Yes, well, it was. Yeah.
I wasn't convinced that it was a realistic depiction of what actually was happening.
Well, some of it was real. But yes, it was entertainment, and it was entertaining. You didn't see the Stephen Fry one. That's where the wildlife unit actually attributed to me a belief in the giant eel theory coming out of the DNA survey we assisted with. I don't actually subscribe to it at all. But I can recount its merits as a lateral thinking idea. Do you recall Professor Gamble from the University of Otago in 2018? We did an environmental DNA survey, which, if you like, was the end of the story, in that there weren't any reptiles in Loch Ness, full stop. And all the mammals were terrestrial. And all we were left with was what I call my basket of fish, the big three fish. The sturgeon, my own favorite, the catfish, Dick Rayner's favorite, that's the European catfish, and the gigantic eel. But of course, ironically, the DNA survey could neither confirm nor refute any of them, because the sturgeon might not have been there. It's a migratory fish. And I only ever proposed it as a way in which the tradition might have been inspired. And very, very few sightings are attributable to sturgeon. And the catfish idea was that a few might have been introduced by man, by the Victorians, and because they're long-lived, they might have lived, individuals might have survived until now, which is not impossible. They wouldn't breed because the temperature isn't high enough. And so there wouldn't be very many of them. There might only be one of them, for example. And then the DNA survey would not necessarily pick it up. The giant eel theory has been about since the beginning. But of course, the DNA that we did get in the survey, and there was lots and lots of eel DNA, but it would be exactly the same as all the common eels. So it was neither here nor there. But it was there, if you see what I mean. The eel DNA was there. So for the punters, it was the get out to avoid Professor Lynch being Professor Gemmell being lynched at the loch side.
Or indeed Professor Lynch being gemmelled.
Yes.
I think the giant eel theory, well, I think one of the reasons that Professor Gemmell was so interested in that theory is because in New Zealand they do have
quite big ones.
eels. Yeah.
Yes,
the New Zealand eel is up to, I think, 9 feet long or something.
It can be pretty big, yes. And of course, the sightings of the multi-hump sea serpent form in Loch Ness are sort of eel-like, at least if you picture an eel on its side, because of course eels wiggle laterally, they don't, not vertically. That's always been a problem for zoologists with sea serpents. It's something I go into in some depth. I try and explain, as you pointed out, the actual mechanism of displacement wakes from ships. The illusion is greatest when you're low down and to the side. If you're on board the vessel, you can see the wake for what it is. If you're in front of the vessel, likewise, you can see the wake fanning out on either side, or astern of the vessel. But if you are at the side and some distance away, and preferably low down, then you get this series of beautifully regular curved humps. And it's attributable to the lack of familiarity we have, or originally had, for this phenomenon. I'm thinking really of the coast of North America, the New England coastline in 1817, when the first steam vessels appeared and began to use that coast. The point is that for the first time on calm water, and it had to be calm water, sea serpents were only seen on calm water. You would not have seen wakes, apart from animal wakes, in the sailing ship era, because when there's no wind, the sailing ship goes nowhere. It is becalmed. And when the wind does blow, it raises waves which obscure the wake that the sailing ship is making. This does not, of course, happen with the steamship, whose wakes are not visible when there are wind waves, but in calm weather, you will see for the first time these wakes. Now, in fact, I attribute the Gloucester sea serpent of 1817 largely to leatherback turtles and their wakes. But the steamships had a lot to do with it. And it was in Loch Ness, which is part of the Caledonian Canal, and quite large vessels move through it, that this phenomenon was then diagnosed by the investigators of the 1960s. It's just they couldn't bring themselves to claim it too loudly because there were still the long-necked sightings, which of course we can also attribute to another phenomenon, which are the water birds. But you take the point about the sea serpents.
Oh, completely. Which does bring us then to the enormous question. I think I know the answer already. Are there any traditional, monstrous, unknown creatures waiting to be found?
You mean any at all, anywhere? Yes.
Any at all, anywhere?
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't explored the depths of the ocean. I am not a professional skeptic. I've had my interest, and I am a sympathetic skeptic. In other words, I am skeptical of the things that I've studied, the allegations of creatures, say in Loch Ness. I don't think there are anything particularly unusual there, but there are some wonderful things which cause people to think they are looking at large animals. But the depths of the ocean are still very much unexplored. There are also probably some new species in plain sight among the cetaceans, the beaked whales in particular. I think there might even be a picture of one of them in one of my witnesses, Dr. Sharp, one of the very few pictures attributable to sea serpents. So until we have explored the depths of the ocean, and we have begun, but we're nowhere near finished with it, then the worst thing out there is still us.
And one of the things that I liked a lot about your book is it's one of the first things that I've read that makes the point that leatherback turtles are not rare vagrants. They're meant to be up here. This is part of what they do.
Yes, it's important to look at the behavior of the animal. I mean, I point to grey whales as what the French Navy were witnessing off the coast of Vietnam when in the colonial era, because these odd animals they were seeing undulated up and down as whales do, but also side to side. And sometimes they had fins and sometimes they didn't. And they also had spiny backs, like a saw shape. Well, grey whales turn on their sides in shallow water to take mouthfuls of sediment from the bottom, which they then filter for the invertebrates within them through their baleen. And so when the whale is observed in shallow water, its tail doesn't break surface, by the way, it doesn't fluke. It would only fluke, its tail would only come out of the water, identifying it as a whale in deeper water. But in Halong Bay, the water is shallow. If it turns on its side, it will often expose the pectoral fin and a tail fluke, one lobe of the tail together. So you get fins in that aspect. And of course, it is undulating horizontally as well as vertically. And so there it is that the behavior is important to understand. And that is a complete explanation of those particular sightings, which of course interested people at the time. The humpback whale exposing its pectoral fins, its very, very long pectoral fins, I think accounts for a great many strange sea serpent sightings, the crest that's described, which are the sort of knuckles on the humpback's fin, on its pectoral flipper, I think. You see, at the time of these encounters, a lot of the whales had been killed in the Atlantic, particularly. The whalers had transferred their attention, or having to transfer their attention to the Pacific. And it was in the Atlantic that we have most of these Western traditions. With the leatherback, the behavior which is important to me is their dogged determination to do what they want to do and keep on doing it. Turtles that we know about, their feeding habits. You've got green turtles eating seagrass. You've got loggerheads crunching at shellfish in shallow water, and so they dive. They come up just to breathe. But the leatherback feeds on jellyfish, and jellyfish, of course, are in the open water for the most part. And so it will swim at the surface or near surface for very considerable periods, and it will not be deterred from it. And it's the biggest of the turtles. You've got about a ton of turtle churning along with its great big flippers quite fast. And it leaves a very considerable displacement wake, much as a ship would. And I think that's got a lot to do with the Gloucester sea serpent.
Makes perfect sense.
Well, yes, again, it's the behavior, not just the animal, you see. You can't even keep leatherbacks in captivity because they just barge into the side of the tank. They won't swim round in circles. They're very determined. They don't make... Oh, yes, go on.
Sorry. No. Please finish.
I say they don't make false crawls when they come to lay their eggs on beaches. If a loggerhead female might walk up onto, paddle up onto a beach, think better of it and go back into the surf. A leatherback will just barge their way up, scatter the beach furniture and get it done.
They're remarkable creatures. They're on my bucket list. I really want to see a live leatherback turtle. Because I've always, ever since I was a little boy, and I saw one in, oh golly, it was a museum in Australia somewhere.
They've got the biggest one. They've got the biggest one ever found in the museum in Cardiff.
Yeah, Enormous bloody things.
Enormous
I've always
things.
wanted to see a living one.
They're rare, of course. They are a bit rare nowadays. And they keep eating plastic bags.
Yeah, thinking they're jellyfish.
Absolutely. No, it's this is a point that I would make, actually, and that is that in many ways, the prospects are better for whales and other marine mammals like seals. But that's because we've stopped killing them. But of course, we're taking resources from the sea and we're cluttering it up with debris. That's the problem. So I hope we need enough resources. And I hope we stop putting plastic bags in the water and fishing nets.
Amen to that.
Well, you see, Dr. Robert France, who I've got a great deal of respect for, has this ethnobiological way of looking at things, pointing for his explanation to sea serpent sightings to fishing nets with floats or other debris towed by a variety of marine animals to account for these sea serpent sightings. In other words, the line of humps. And it's, you know, on the face of it, it's quite a good idea. I've come not to agree with it in that I think debris each bit of debris would have its own wake. Often the encounters have changes in the number of humps and indeed, depending on the speed, the length of the humps. Basically, I prefer displacement wakes because displacement wakes, when the vessel or the animal is slow, the wakes consist of many small humps. When the vessel increases speed, the length of those humps increases. In fact, when a vessel actually kicks up its heels and goes onto the plane, then the wake waves are virtually continuous. So you have to understand the behavior of vessels as well.
Sure. Adrian, we're running out of time. I've got a minute and a half left. Where the last 40 minutes went, I don't know. Because I've enjoyed this massively. It feels like we've only been chatting for 10 minutes. But I've just got a big flashy thing come up on the screen in front of me saying that you must stop now, Mr. Downs, or else.
Oh, well.
Thank you very much for this. I enjoyed it massively, and I'd like to do it again sometime if we may, because I think we've scratched the surface.
I'm sure we can, and I've enjoyed it too. All the best.
I look forward to seeing you again, Adrian. Bye-bye.
Bye now.
If you want to support us and help us make more content like these, please press like, subscribe, follow our Facebook page and check out our Patreon.
And as the ghost of Joe Strummer, who's an ever more regular visitor to my little studio, says, don't forget to ring the notification bell, otherwise you'll miss the new episodes. And that would be an awful pity, wouldn't it?
If you've been affected by any of the topics in today's episode, you can just bugger off, because we don't give a monkeys. Bloody well get a grip. Sort your own bloody problems out rather than ringing up somewhere.
That was a public information film.
Well, that's about it for this episode. I want to say a big thank you to everybody who did their thing so the episode could happen. First of all, a big thank you to my guest this week and last, Adrian Shine, and I very much look forward to having you back on the show, Adrian. I haven't enjoyed doing an interview as much of that in a long time, and I usually enjoy doing my interviews. I want to say a big thank you to my producer, Louis, who's still in South Carolina, and I'm not going to make jokes about him because he's a dear, sweet boy, and I love him dearly, and I look forward to going over to the colonies sooner rather than later to visit him and his lovely wife. And I want to say a big thank you to all the other people who keep the CFZ going: Isabel, Gwyn, Graham, Richard, and V, who did voiceovers and things here. Without you, I couldn't do the show. So thank you very much to all of you. I'm going to be back on Wednesday. What am I talking about on Wednesday? From memory, I think I'm off on a very strange rabbit hole whereby I managed to visit a load of abandoned rabbits, a mystery cat sighting, 2 dead muntjac, and the peculiar story of Eunice Mitford, who fell in love with somebody she shouldn't have fallen in love with, shot herself in the head, and then died 7 or 8 years later, and how that all ties in together with all the other weirdness. Next Wednesday's show, you're going to have to watch it to find out, because it's a very, very strange story. And I'll be back next Saturday. What am I doing Saturday? Well, I have a vague idea. It'll be something featuring Richard Freeman or featuring Darren Nash. I've got both of them coming to stay with me in a few days, and I am going to be filming several shows with them, and so you're just going to have to wait and see. But assuming that you're going to be there watching the show, and I am talking to you, Mr. McCrinnan, if you're there, Mr. McCrinnan, watching the show, and I'm there, as I usually am, doing the live chat and the notifications and all the other garbage and bilge and gubbins that I do on a Saturday afternoon, then I will most certainly be seeing you.